I should have known something was off the second my phone buzzed, and I saw Brandon's name pop up on my screen. We weren't exactly friends. Scratch that. We weren't even close to being acquaintances. The only time he ever texted me was to relay messages from Sophia's mother, usually something passive-aggressive about our home being too modern or how I wasn't upholding family traditions. But this message wasn't from Mrs. Caldwell. It was from Brandon, straight to me, and it was as cold as a corporate email. Hey, we're having a small family gathering this Sunday at Mom and Dad's house. It's important. Be there at 3 p.m. It's a surprise, so don't tell Sophia. No, hope you can make it. No, how's it going? Just a direct demand, like I was being summoned to some royal court. My gut immediately twisted. I stared at the text for a long time, the words replaying in my head like an alarm bell I couldn't shut off. A family gathering I wasn't supposed to tell my wife about? A surprise at a house where I'd never once felt welcomed? Yeah, that was weird. Real weird. I took my phone and walked into the kitchen, where my best friend Jordan was sipping a beer at the counter. We had been watching the game, but now I wasn't in the mood. Brandon just texted me, I said, sliding my phone across the counter. Jordan picked it up, skimmed the message, and raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a trap. I exhaled sharply. Right? Why wouldn't they tell Sophia? Because it's about you, he said simply, taking another sip. You sure you want to walk into whatever this is? I wasn't sure at all. The Caldwells had never liked me, but they tolerated me because Sophia had dug in her heels and made it clear she wasn't going to marry some trust fund stockbroker from their country club. I wasn't like them. I didn't grow up attending fancy banquets or networking with CEOs at charity galas. I came from a blue-collar family, built my career from the ground up, and when I met Sophia, I loved her for her, not for her last name. But to them, I was an outsider, a distraction. I had put up with their condescension for years. The smug glances, the thinly veiled insults, the way they spoke about me in third person, even when I was standing right there. But something about this invitation felt different, like they weren't just going to disapprove of me this time, like they were about to make a move. Jordan set the bottle down with a thud. So, what's the play? I clenched my jaw. I needed to see what this was. I typed back a short response. Sure. See you then. No questions. No hesitation. Just enough to let them believe I was walking straight into whatever they had planned. Guess I'll find out, I muttered, locking my phone. Sunday arrived too fast. The whole morning, Sophia was curled up on the couch, flipping through wedding pictures on her laptop. She had a habit of doing that whenever she was feeling sentimental. You okay? I asked, leaning against the doorway. She glanced up and smiled. Yeah, just looking through old photos. It's crazy, right? We've been married 5 years already. I walked over and kissed the top of her head. She didn't know I was leaving soon. Didn't know where I was going. I wasn't about to lie to her, but I also didn't want to worry her. I forced a smile. Yeah, time flies. My stomach twisted. If only she knew what her family was up to. At exactly 2:45 p.m., I got into my car and drove to her parents' house. The Caldwell estate was a monument to wealth. A sprawling 3-story home in Silverwood Heights, the kind of place that screamed old money. Perfectly manicured lawns. A circular driveway lined with imported stone fountains. Grand iron gates that only opened with a security code. I had spent countless weekends here, always feeling like a visitor, a guest in my own marriage. I parked the car, took a breath, and stepped out. As soon as I rang the doorbell, the massive wooden doors swung open, not by a butler, but by Mrs. Caldwell herself. She was dressed like she was attending some exclusive brunch, a pearl necklace around her throat, her expression unreadable. Brandon stood behind her, arms crossed. Lena lingered in the background, pretending to be interested in something on her phone. And Mr. Caldwell? He was already seated in the grand living room, a thick folder on the coffee table in front of him. My pulse kicked up. Something was about to go down. Mrs. Caldwell gave me a thin smile. Come in, dear. I stepped inside, feeling the heavy air settle around me like a weighted blanket. This wasn't a friendly gathering. This wasn't a family meeting. This was an ambush. And I had just walked straight into it. I stepped inside, and the moment the doors closed behind me, I knew I had walked straight into something I wasn't supposed to escape from easily. The air inside the Caldwell estate was always heavy, always filled with the scent of antique wood and whatever expensive candle Mrs. Caldwell had burning to impress guests. But today, the air felt suffocating. The grand chandelier overhead cast its glow on a room filled with nothing but cold, expectant faces. Everyone was already there. Mr. Caldwell sat at the center of the living room like a judge at his podium, his fingers intertwined over the thick folder in front of him. His eyes, sharp and unrelenting, met mine the moment I entered. Mrs. Caldwell, standing next to him, wore that same practiced smile, the kind she always put on before delivering a condescending remark. Brandon was leaning against the fireplace with his arms crossed, smirking like he was enjoying the show already. Lena, Sophia's younger sister, sat on the arm of a chair, her phone in her lap, glancing at me but not making eye contact. And then there were the others, extended family members who rarely showed up unless it was something important. An uncle from out of town. A cousin who never spoke to Sophia but was suddenly present for whatever this was. A council of vultures, waiting for me to react. I stayed by the doorway, my arms relaxed but my jaw tight. I wasn't going to sit. Sitting meant submitting. Sitting meant I was playing by their rules. Take a seat, Mr. Caldwell said finally, gesturing toward the empty armchair across from him. I didn't move. I'll stand. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance? Frustration? Good. Silence stretched for a long moment, and then Mrs. Caldwell spoke, her voice sugary sweet. We appreciate you coming on such short notice, she said. I tilted my head. Do I have a choice? Her smile didn't waver, but I saw the way her fingers twitched. We assumed you'd want to cooperate. Cooperate with what? I asked, letting my gaze sweep the room. I wasn't told what this was about, just that it was important. That was when Mr. Caldwell leaned forward, fingers tapping against the folder on the coffee table. We need you to sign these, he said. I didn't have to ask what these were. I already knew. I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, and let my eyes fall to the stack of papers he was now pushing toward me. And there it was. The words in bold letters at the top of the page. Divorce agreement. I let out a small, breathy laugh. Are you serious? Mrs. Caldwell sighed like she was exhausted by my inconvenient existence. We've given this a lot of thought, and it's clear that this marriage isn't working. I raised an eyebrow. It isn't working? Or I'm not working for you? Brandon scoffed. Oh, come on, man. Don't make this dramatic. I turned my gaze on him. You mean like ambushing me with a room full of people and shoving divorce papers in my face without Sophia even knowing? That kind of dramatic? That wiped the smirk off his face. I looked back at Mr. Caldwell. Where's Sophia? He didn't answer. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. Where is my wife? Mr. Caldwell exhaled slowly, like a man annoyed that he had to explain himself. She's not here. I nodded once, letting that sink in. So you planned a divorce without telling her. It's for her own good, Mrs. Caldwell said smoothly, as if this were some intervention and not a backroom execution of my marriage. You don't contribute to this family, she continued. You don't respect our traditions. You don't support Sophia's future the way a husband should. This arrangement has been an unfortunate distraction. A distraction. I let the word hang between us, my lips curling into a small, humorless smile. This is cute, I murmured, shaking my head. Cute. Brandon snapped, pushing off the fireplace. What's cute is that you think you belong here. You were a mistake from the start. We're just cleaning it up. I chuckled under my breath. Cleaning it up. Right. Lena shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers tightening around her phone. I caught the small flicker of doubt in her eyes, the first crack in their perfect little united front. I looked back at the papers. So let me get this straight, I said, voice calm. You ambushed me, drafted up divorce papers without my wife's knowledge, and now you expect me to sign them because you said so. It's for the best, Mrs. Caldwell insisted. For who? I countered. Silence. Then, Mr. Caldwell, in his ever-so-patient tone, said, We'd prefer to do this the easy way. I tilted my head. And the hard way? His fingers drummed against the table. Let's not go there. Oh, there it was. The unspoken, or else hanging in the air. They thought they could back me into a corner. That I would break under their pressure, fold like a nobody who had just realized he was being thrown out of a world he was never supposed to enter in the first place. They thought they had power over me. They didn't know I had come prepared. That was when I smirked. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my own folder. A thicker one. Heavier. I tossed it onto the coffee table, right next to their divorce papers. Actually, I said, leaning back, I have a surprise for you too. I watched the way their faces shifted. How Mrs. Caldwell's practiced smile wavered for the first time. How Mr. Caldwell's fingers stilled against the table. How Brandon, ever the smug little snake, narrowed his eyes like he suddenly wasn't sure he was still in control of this conversation. No one reached for the folder at first. It was Mr. Caldwell who finally took it, flipping open the cover with a measured breath. I watched him read the first page, and then the second, and then the color drained from his face. Mrs. Caldwell took it from him next, skimming through the pages so fast her hands started to shake. Brandon grabbed a sheet, scanned it, and his entire expression shattered. "What the hell is this?" he choked out. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Proof." Silence crashed over the room like a tidal wave. They weren't expecting this. They thought they had all the control, that they were leading this conversation. They weren't. I had just turned their perfect little coup into a full-blown war, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth might crack. His voice was quiet, but laced with fury. "You have no idea what you've done." I leaned forward, my smirk deepening. "Oh," I murmured. "I think I do." The silence in the room was deafening. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fall. It crashes, shatters, and leaves everyone scrambling to pick up the pieces. Mr. Caldwell stared at the documents in front of him, his hands gripping the pages so tightly that I half expected them to rip. Mrs. Caldwell sat frozen beside him, her usual composed demeanor crumbling as her eyes darted over the text. Brandon, always the first to open his mouth, was completely still, his face drained of color. Lena, ever the quiet observer, clutched her phone like it was the only thing grounding her to reality. I crossed my arms and leaned against the back of the armchair they had so graciously offered me earlier. No snide remarks now. I mused, watching them struggle to process what they were looking at. No smug smiles. No veiled insults about how I'm beneath your family. No one answered. Perfect. Mr. Caldwell was the first to snap out of it, his jaw tightening as he slowly set the folder down on the coffee table, like it might explode if he moved too fast. "Where did you get these?" His voice was measured, but I could hear the underlying panic. I tilted my head. "The same way you got my divorce papers drafted without Sophia's knowledge, I imagine. A few well-placed connections, some thorough digging, and the truth just falls into your lap." I smirked. "The difference is, I actually have something worth showing." Mrs. Caldwell's hands trembled as she flipped through another page. "This is," her breath hitched. "This is ridiculous." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you shaking?" Brandon finally found his voice, though it was weaker than usual. "This is fake." He spat, though the way he refused to look at me said otherwise. "You think you can just waltz in here and accuse our family of this nonsense? You have nothing." I exhaled a soft chuckle and walked over to the coffee table, tapping the folder with my finger. "That right there," I said, my voice smooth. "That's bank records, email chains, proof of your parents' financial manipulation. The distraction you claimed I was? That was just your cover while you drained Sophia's accounts to patch up your little business failures." Brandon's nostrils flared. "That's a damn lie." I shrugged. "Is it?" I reached into my pocket, pulling out a USB drive, and casually tossed it onto the table next to the folder. "If you'd prefer, I can pull up the audio recordings instead. There's nothing quite like hearing someone admit to their crimes in their own voice, don't you think?" Mrs. Caldwell's breath audibly caught in her throat. Brandon lunged for the folder, but Mr. Caldwell snatched it away before he could so much as touch it. His fingers curled around the edges like he was physically holding his family together. "Enough," he growled. I leaned in slightly. "Oh, I don't think we're anywhere near enough." His glare was sharp enough to cut glass, but I wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. Not when I knew exactly how much power I held at this moment. Mrs. Caldwell looked at me, her expression suddenly pleading. "Matthew, let's be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I laughed, shaking my head. "You all lured me here under false pretenses, shoved divorce papers at me like I was some employee you were firing, and now that you realize you don't have the upper hand, you want to be reasonable." I gestured to the USB drive. "You were willing to go behind Sophia's back to get rid of me, but the second I fight back, you want to negotiate." Brandon clenched his fists. "You have no right to do this." I scoffed. "Oh, I have every right. See, you made a crucial mistake. You thought I was just some clueless idiot who would roll over and take it. You thought you had all the leverage. I gestured around the room. Look at you. Look at all of you. You brought in the whole family for this, planned an entire ambush, convinced yourselves that I'd be too shocked or weak to fight back. I smiled. You underestimated me. Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose, gripping the folder like it was a lifeline. What do you want? Bingo. I pushed off the chair, taking my time as I reached for the pen that was meant for me, the same one they had placed neatly next to the divorce papers, expecting me to sign away my marriage like it was a failed business deal. I picked it up, twirling it between my fingers, letting the anticipation settle over them like a heavy fog. Then I looked at Mrs. Caldwell. You said this was for Sophia's own good, right? She swallowed, nodding stiffly. Then I say we let her decide. Her face fell. Mr. Caldwell's knuckles went white against the folder. That's not an option. I shrugged. It is now. Brandon shook his head furiously. She's too. Too what? I challenged. Too smart. Too strong. Too capable of making her own decisions. I tapped the USB again. Because trust me, if you really believed she was too naive to see the truth, you wouldn't have worked so hard to hide it from her. Lena, who had been uncharacteristically quiet this whole time, suddenly stood up. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the tension like a blade. You have proof. I nodded once. She hesitated, glancing at her parents, then back at me. Everything. My lips curled. Everything. She exhaled slowly, looking down at the table, her hands gripping the sides of her dress. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wasn't innocent in all of this, but she also wasn't as far gone as the rest of them. Brandon scoffed. Oh, don't tell me you're actually buying into this. I don't know. Brandon, she cut in sharply, her voice stronger now. Shouldn't Sophia be the one to decide? The room went dead silent. I watched as Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw so hard I thought it might shatter. Mrs. Caldwell looked like she was on the verge of a panic attack. And Brandon? He looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall. I let the moment stretch, savoring the way their perfect little coup was falling apart in real time. Then I spoke, my voice calm but firm. I suggest you call Sophia, I said, stepping back. Because I'm not signing a damn thing until she hears the truth. And just like that, I turned their ambush into a full-blown war. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The Caldwells were frozen, staring at me like I had just flipped the entire chessboard. And I had. They thought they were in control, thought they had the power to dictate my life, my marriage, my future. They had spent years looking down on me, dismissing me, treating me like an unwanted guest in their perfect little world. But now, I had flipped the script. Mr. Caldwell's hands were still clenched around the folder of evidence I had dropped like a bomb onto their carefully orchestrated plans. Brandon looked ready to explode, his jaw so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Mrs. Caldwell was pale, her fingers trembling as she gripped the arm of the couch, her eyes darting toward the USB drive sitting on the coffee table like it was a ticking time bomb. Lena, however, looked torn. She wasn't speaking, but she wasn't siding with them either. That hesitation was all I needed to know that she was starting to realize just how deep this deception ran. I had them cornered. And now, I was about to watch them crumble. Right on cue, the front door opened. I turned my head just as Sophia walked in, looking confused. Mom? She called out, stepping into the room. Dad? What's going on? The air in the room shifted instantly. I saw Mrs. Caldwell visibly straighten, her expression smoothing into something almost neutral, like she hadn't just spent the last 15 minutes trying to tear my marriage apart. Mr. Caldwell glanced at me, then at his daughter, his mind clearly working overtime to regain control of the situation. Brandon stepped back from the fireplace, his smirk gone, replaced with something more cautious. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. This was their moment to come clean, to prove to Sophia just how little respect they had for her choices, for her independence, for her ability to think for herself. Would they admit to what they had done? Or would they try to bury it, right in front of her? Sophia's eyes landed on the papers on the coffee table, and she frowned. What's all this? Her mother spoke first. Sweetheart, she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. Why don't you come sit down? We were just having a discussion with your husband. Sophia didn't move. About what? I finally decided to break my silence. About the fact that they ambushed me with divorce papers. I said, my voice calm but firm. Without telling you. Sophia's entire body stiffened. What? Her voice was barely above a whisper. They had everything planned. I continued, gesturing toward the folder her father still clung to like a lifeline. They brought in the whole family, made sure I was alone, and then handed me this. I reached down, grabbing the stack of divorce papers they had shoved at me when I walked in. I held them up for her to see. Because apparently, I'm not fit for this family. Sophia's eyes darted to her parents, her expression shifting from confusion to something else. Something dangerous. Mom. Her voice was sharper now. Her mother sighed, feigning exhaustion, like I was being unreasonable. Like I was causing a scene instead of simply exposing what they had done. Sophia, sweetheart, listen, Mrs. Caldwell started. We just wanted to. You did this. Sophia interrupted, her voice cold. Her mother hesitated. Brandon took that as his cue to step in. Come on, Sophia. You know this was coming, he said, waving a dismissive hand. You had to see it. He doesn't belong here. He never did. I watched as Sophia's entire posture changed. She turned to her father. Did you know about this? Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat, setting the folder down. Sophia, we were just trying to do what's best for you. You have to understand. No, she cut him off. I don't have to understand anything. I have to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly. She gestured toward the divorce papers in my hands. Did you try to get my husband to sign these behind my back? A beat of silence. Then, Mrs. Caldwell tried to smile, her voice soft and manipulative. We were only trying to protect you, dear. Sophia's face went blank. That, she said, her voice like steel, was not my question. Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose. Sophia, did you do this behind my back? Silence. And that was all the answer she needed. Sophia nodded slowly, then turned to me. What did you do? She asked. I met her gaze, unshaken. I did what they didn't expect me to do. I walked over to the folder I had brought and opened it. I pulled out a set of documents, flipping through them until I reached the part one wanted. Then I handed them to her. Sophia took the papers, scanning the first few lines, and her face drained of color. She flipped to another page, then another, and then slowly looked up at her father. You took money from me? Her father stiffened. I can explain. No, she snapped. No, you can't. You stole from me. I spoke before they could try to twist the narrative. They've been using your name to fund their bad business deals, Sophia, I said. They've been pulling from our joint accounts for years. Whenever they needed money, they used you as their safety net. Sophia's hands shook as she held the documents. This can't be right. Check the records yourself. I pointed to the USB drive still sitting on the coffee table. It's all there. Every transaction. Every shady wire transfer. Every lie they've told you. Mrs. Caldwell paled. Sophia, you have to understand. We only did this because we love you. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. Love me, she echoed. You tried to destroy my marriage without even telling me. You stole from me. You used me. And you want to call that love? Brandon, still grasping for control, scoffed. Oh, come on, Sophia, don't be dramatic. Shut up, Brandon. He blinked. Excuse me. Sophia turned to face him, her body radiating pure fury. You knew about this, didn't you? Brandon hesitated. That was enough. She shook her head, stepping back like she needed to physically distance herself from her own family. I cannot believe this. She turned to me, her voice quieter now. How long have you known? I exhaled. A couple of months. She stared at me, taking that in. And you didn't tell me? I wanted to, I admitted. But I needed proof first. She swallowed hard, nodding. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the realization sinking in. Her parents weren't who she thought they were. Her brother wasn't who she thought he was. Her entire family had just proven that they saw her not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as a means to an end. She turned back to the divorce papers on the table. Then, she reached for the pen. Her mother gasped. Sophia. Sophia signed my documents. And just like that, the Caldwell empire began to fall. The moment Sophia signed those papers, I swear I could hear the foundation of the Caldwell family's power cracking beneath them. Mr. Caldwell's face went stone white, his fingers gripping the edge of the table like he needed something solid to hold on to. Mrs. Caldwell let out a soft gasp, barely above a whisper, but it was Brandon who snapped first. You can't be serious, he spat, stepping forward like he could physically undo what had just happened. Sophia, You don't actually believe any of this, do you? Sophia turned to him slowly. Her eyes, usually filled with warmth, usually the same ones that had looked at me on our wedding day with nothing but love, were ice cold. You think I don't believe the bank records? She asked, her voice controlled, deadly. You think I don't recognize my own name on transactions I never approved? Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it. He knew there was nothing he could say to explain the evidence sitting right in front of them. I can't believe you did this, Sophia continued, shaking her head. You, all of you used me. Mrs. Caldwell straightened her back, regaining just enough of her composure to try and twist the narrative. Sweetheart, we were never using you. We were protecting you. Sophia let out a sharp laugh, one that had zero humor in it. Protecting me? She echoed. By lying to me? By stealing from me? By trying to erase my marriage without even telling me? Her mother flinched. I watched as Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening so much I thought it might snap. His face had that calculated stillness of a man trying to find a way out of a losing game. That's when he made a mistake. Instead of apologizing, instead of taking any accountability, he looked directly at me. You planned this, didn't you? He said, his voice low and accusing. You played the victim, but the whole time, you were setting this up. I didn't even blink. I wasn't the one draining my daughter's accounts behind her back. His nostrils flared. You're a snake. I leaned forward slightly. And you're a fraud. The room tensed, the unspoken war between us now fully out in the open. Mr. Caldwell wasn't used to losing. He wasn't used to being exposed. For years, he had been untouchable, hiding his financial disasters behind his prestigious name and the illusion of control. But the moment I threw their secrets onto the table, that illusion shattered. And he hated it. Sophia broke the tension first, turning to her father with a look that made it painfully clear she was seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him. I trusted you, she said, her voice raw. You made me believe I could count on my family, that you had my best interests at heart. Her father opened his mouth, but she cut him off. You knew, she continued, her voice rising. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you thought I was too blind to see it. You thought I'd never find out. Lena, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. I didn't know, she whispered. The words were small, but they carried weight. Mrs. Caldwell turned to her sharply. Lena. I didn't, Lena insisted, looking between them all. I thought you were just, I don't know, moving money around. I didn't know you were stealing. Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw. It wasn't stealing. Lena scoffed, her voice unsteady. Then what would you call it? Silence. I took in the fractured state of their family, watching as the cracks in their armor spread faster than they could cover them. Then, Brandon snapped. This is ridiculous, he muttered, shaking his head. You're really going to throw away everything for him? His eyes locked onto Sophia with pure resentment, like this was somehow all my fault instead of their own. Sophia didn't even hesitate. I'm throwing away nothing, she said, voice steady. I'm taking back everything you try to take from me. Brandon let out a harsh laugh, turning back toward their father like he was expecting backup, but Mr. Caldwell wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the divorce papers on the table. His hands twitched. His breathing was controlled, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled against his palm. He was realizing it now. He had lost. For years, he had treated Sophia like a pawn, controlling every major decision in her life under the guise of family duty. He thought she would always fall in line, always defer to their authority. But now, she had made a choice. And it wasn't them. Dad, Brandon said, stepping forward slightly. Say something. Mr. Caldwell didn't answer. I could feel the anger building inside him, but not the kind that explodes. Not yet. No, he was calculating. He was waiting, trying to find a way to regain control. So I made sure he knew there was no way out. You know what happens next, don't you? I asked, watching him carefully. His eyes flickered toward me, cautious. I gestured toward the USB drive still sitting on the table. Everything in that folder? It's already backed up. And a copy? That's already in my lawyer's hands. Brandon's head snapped toward me. You wouldn't. I just smiled. I would. The silence that followed was thick, choking, like the last dying breath of a kingdom before it crumbles. I let the weight of it settle over them. Let them feel, for the first time, what true powerlessness felt like. Then I straightened, picking up the divorce papers from the table, flipping through the signed pages. Thank you, Sophia, I said, slipping them into my folder. Now we're done here. I turned toward the door, but Sophia's voice stopped me. Not yet. I turned back. She was staring at her father, her gaze unwavering. I want you to look at me, she said quietly. Mr. Caldwell finally lifted his head. You built your life around control, Sophia said. You told yourself that if you dictated everything, you'd never lose. But guess what? She gestured to the empty space between them, to the family she no longer belonged to. You just lost everything. Mr. Caldwell's hands curled into fists. Mrs. Caldwell was crying silently. Brandon stood rigid, his jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. Lena? Lena just looked sad. Sophia let out a slow, controlled breath, then reached for the USB drive. I'll let the authorities handle the rest, she said simply. Then she turned to me. Let's go. And just like that, we walked out the door, leaving behind the wreckage of the Caldwell dynasty. As we stepped outside the Caldwell estate, I could still feel the weight of everything I had left behind in that suffocating room. The silence, the shattered illusions, the look on Mr. Caldwell's face when he realized he had lost everything. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Sophia walked beside me, her posture stiff, her hands balled into fists at her sides. I could tell she was holding herself together by sheer willpower alone. She hadn't said a word since she told her family she was leaving. I opened the car door for her, but she hesitated before getting in. Her hands trembled slightly, her breathing uneven. I reached out, gently placing a hand on her arm. Sophia. She turned her head to look at me, and for the first time since she had read the evidence, I saw it, the anger simmering beneath the surface, rage held back by sheer control. I need a minute, she whispered. I nodded, stepping back as she ran a hand through her hair, exhaling sharply. Then, suddenly, she let out a dry, bitter laugh. My own family, she muttered, shaking her head. They thought they could just push you out of my life. Like I was some child they could manipulate. I leaned against the car, letting her get it out. Did they ever even love me? She asked suddenly, her voice raw. Or was I just their investment? I didn't answer right away, because honestly, I didn't know. And I wasn't going to lie to her, not now. I think they convinced themselves that controlling you was love, I said finally. But real love? No. Real love isn't conditional. It isn't about power. It isn't about keeping you in a golden cage. She nodded slowly, pressing her fingers against her temples. Then, the front door of the estate slammed open behind us. We both turned just in time to see Brandon storming down the steps, his face twisted in fury. Sophia, he barked. You can't just walk away from us. I stepped in front of her instinctively, but she was already moving past me, her own anger boiling over. You still don't get it, do you? She snapped, turning to face her brother. I'm not walking away. I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back. Brandon scoffed. You think you can just cut off your family? What are you going to do, Sophia? Be a nobody with him? He jerked his chin toward me, his words dripping with contempt. I felt my fists clench, but Sophia spoke before I could. You don't get to talk about him like that, she said, her voice sharp as a blade. You don't get to act like you're better than him, not when you've spent your whole life hiding behind Dad's money, scamming your way out of responsibility. Brandon's face turned red. You're making a mistake. Sophia's eyes burned with fury. No, I made a mistake trusting you. She turned on her heel, heading straight for the car. I followed, watching over my shoulder as Brandon stood there, fists clenched, powerless for the first time in his life. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the estate without looking back. Sophia didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared out the window, breathing hard. Then, finally, she whispered, "What do we do now?" I reached over, taking her hand in mine. "We rebuild," I said simply. Without them. And just like that, the Caldwell dynasty was dead. Leaving the Caldwell estate was supposed to feel like freedom, like breaking free from chains that had been tightening around both of us for years. But as I drove away, gripping the wheel with one hand and holding Sophia's trembling fingers with the other, I realized something. This wasn't over. Not yet. Because people like the Caldwells don't accept defeat. They don't just let go of control. They claw for it, scheme for it. And if they can't win, they make damn sure everyone else loses too. I glanced at Sophia. She was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. The anger from earlier had settled into something else, something calculated. "Sophia," I said, my voice careful. She didn't turn her head, just kept watching the trees blur past. Yeah. Are you okay? She let out a short, humorless laugh. Okay, she echoed. I don't even know what that means anymore. I squeezed her hand. We'll figure this out. Finally, she turned to me, her eyes dark with determination. They won't stop, she whispered. You know that, right? I nodded. I know. They'll try to turn this around. Spin some story about how I was manipulated, how you tricked me. They'll lie. I finished for her. Sophia exhaled through her nose, her grip on my hand tightening. Then we can't just walk away. I glanced at her, a slow smile creeping onto my face. What are you saying? She turned back toward the window, but I saw the way her jaw hardened. I'm saying, she murmured, that if they want to play dirty, they're about to learn that I can too. Phase 1, financial ruin. The first thing we did was leak everything. Not to the police. Not yet. That would come later. No, we went public first. It started with whispers, subtle rumors spreading through the exclusive Silverwood Heights social circles, where reputation was everything. The Caldwells had built their legacy on the illusion of wealth and power, and the best way to tear them down was to rip that illusion apart. Sophia knew exactly who to talk to, which socialites would be desperate for a scandal, which ones hated her family, but had always been too afraid to speak up. Within a week, stories started circulating about shady business deals, embezzlement, and backdoor financial losses. At first, people dismissed them as gossip. But then, someone got their hands on the real documents. Documents that just happened to find their way into a journalist's inbox. From there, it exploded. The story went viral in their social circles. The once untouchable Caldwells suddenly found themselves under scrutiny. Investors pulling out, clients backing away, business partners distancing themselves. Then came the banks, with their financial empire unraveling. It didn't take long before creditors came knocking. Their assets were reevaluated, and suddenly, all those loans they had taken out, they couldn't keep up. The house in Silverwood Heights, the one they had used as collateral, seized. The luxury cars, repossessed. The once flourishing Caldwell enterprises, collapsing under lawsuits. Sophia read every headline that came out, every scathing article detailing her father's business failures, every news alert announcing that Brandon had been removed from a board position. And every time, she just smiled. Phase 2, Brandon's fall. The thing about Brandon was that he had always been the golden child. The one groomed to take over the family name. The one given everything, protected from consequences. Until now. With his father's company sinking, Brandon found himself exposed. See, while Mr. Caldwell had been embezzling, Brandon had been doing worse. Using company funds for personal expenses. Setting up shell accounts to funnel money into private investments. And unlike his father, who at least knew how to cover his tracks, Brandon was sloppy. It didn't take long for forensic accountants to trace where the money had gone. And when they did, Brandon was hit with criminal charges. Sophia and I were at home when we got the news. I was making coffee when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, read the headline, and then let out a slow exhale. Well, she murmured, setting the phone down. Brandon's been arrested. I raised an eyebrow. For what? She picked up the phone again, scrolling. Fraud. Money laundering. Wire fraud. I chuckled. Busy guy. Sophia smirked, taking a sip of her coffee. Not anymore. And just like that, the golden child was gone. Phase 3, the final nail in the coffin. Mr. Caldwell was next. The moment Brandon was arrested, authorities turned their eyes to him. The forensic audit on his company uncovered years of financial fraud, shady dealings, and unpaid debts. Lawsuits piled up, and one by one, his former allies, business partners, investors, even friends, turned their backs on him. Nobody wanted to be associated with a sinking ship. And soon, Mr. Caldwell was facing a fate even worse than prison. Irrelevance. See, men like him don't fear losing money. They know how to rebuild. What they fear, what truly terrifies them, is losing status, losing control. Mr. Caldwell went from powerful businessman to outcast in less than 6 months. Nobody returned his calls. Nobody invited him to exclusive events. Nobody wanted anything to do with a disgraced man with no money, no business, and no influence. And that was worse than any prison sentence. Sophia and I finalized our divorce shortly after. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we wanted nothing tying us legally to her family. We sat in the lawyer's office, signing the final documents, and when it was over, Sophia smiled. A fresh start, she said. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We did it. And we had. We weren't running anymore. We weren't trapped under the Caldwell name, under their control. We were free. A few months later, Sophia and I were sitting at a quiet cafe, watching the world move on. Sophia scrolled through her phone, her lips twitching upward. Mom's living in a 2-bedroom rental now, she murmured. I chuckled. I bet she still acts like she owns the country club. She does, Sophia said dryly, shaking her head. But nobody invites her anymore. I smirked. And your dad? She turned her phone toward me. It was a picture of Mr. Caldwell, standing outside a law firm, looking older, defeated. He tried to apply for a job, she said. Didn't get it. I let out a low whistle. Damn. Sophia set her phone down, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she exhaled and leaned back in her chair. They did this to themselves, she said simply. And she was right. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they could dictate her life, erase me, control everything. But in the end, they lost everything. And we walked away. Free. Victorious. And untouchable. It had been months since we walked out of the Caldwell estate, leaving behind the wreckage of their perfect little world. Months since we exposed the truth, shattered their influence, and let them drown in their own corruption. But the beauty of revenge isn't in the moment it happens. It's in the aftermath. The slow, excruciating fallout as everything they once controlled crumbles around them. The Caldwell downfall. The Caldwells had always been careful, meticulous in the way they crafted their image. The respected businessman, the doting mother, the successful heir, the golden family. But when you take away the money, the reputation, the power, all you're left with is the truth. And the truth was, they were nothing without their illusion of control. Brandon's arrest had been the first domino to fall, exposing his fraudulent accounts, his embezzlement schemes, and his reckless financial decisions that had been propped up by his father's name. With the family business already under fire, Mr. Caldwell could do nothing but watch as his legacy crumbled. Bankruptcy filings, lawsuits, creditors seizing assets, their lavish estate, gone, their country club memberships, revoked, their private accounts, once filled with generational wealth, frozen under investigation. Mr. Caldwell's business partners, the same ones who used to praise him at every gala, shake his hand at every fundraiser, call him a visionary, suddenly didn't know him anymore. He was toxic now, a failure, a disgrace. And people like him, they don't survive disgrace. Mrs. Caldwell, she had been the face of high society, the woman who dictated which families mattered and which ones didn't. But now, she was nothing but a scandal. Once the queen of Silverwood Heights, she had been blacklisted from the very social circles she used to command. Invitations stopped coming. People stopped returning her calls. The same women she used to sip champagne with at luncheons were now whispering behind her back, relishing in her downfall the way she once relished in the suffering of others. And Brandon? He was in prison, facing years behind bars for financial fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The golden son, the heir, the one who was supposed to carry on the family name, now he was just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. And when it came time for his sentencing, Sophia and I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as he was led away in handcuffs. He turned once, locking eyes with Sophia. His stare was filled with hate, with resentment, with the fury of a man who had spent his entire life believing he was untouchable, only to realize that the world didn't work that way. Sophia? She didn't flinch. She just smiled. The divorce and the new beginning. After everything, the last step was our divorce. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we needed a clean break. I remember the day we signed the final papers, sitting in the lawyer's office. Sophia glanced at me, her fingers running over the crisp pages of her freedom. This doesn't feel like an ending, she murmured. I smiled. It's not. And it wasn't. This wasn't the end of us. It was just the end of them. The end of their influence. Their control. Their ability to manipulate and destroy. Sophia had spent her entire life under the Caldwell name. A name that had once meant power and status, but now meant fraud and disgrace. By signing that paper, she wasn't losing anything. She was choosing herself. We walked out of that office lighter, unburdened. For the first time in years, we were free. The final act of revenge. You'd think that would be the end of it. That we'd walk away, Let them rot in the ruins of their own making. But there was one last piece to play. Because while their money was gone, their reputation shattered, and their golden son locked behind bars, they still had one thing left to lose. Their dignity. So we made sure they lost that, too. Sophia's last move was simple but brilliant. She told her story. She didn't hold a press conference. She didn't seek out TV interviews or some grand spectacle. She simply sat down, wrote a detailed letter, and sent it to every major publication in the city. It was raw, honest, damning. She told the world about her parents' betrayal, the way they tried to control her, steal from her, manipulate her into believing she was nothing more than an asset to be used. She wrote about Brandon's fraud, about the night they ambushed me with divorce papers, about how they tried to erase me like I had been nothing but a temporary inconvenience. She told the truth, and the world listened. The article went viral, spreading like wildfire. People who had once admired the Caldwells, who had envied their wealth and prestige, suddenly saw them for what they truly were: liars, manipulators, criminals. And that was the final nail in the coffin. Because now, it wasn't just their money that was gone. It wasn't just their business, their social standing, their family name. It was their legacy. The Caldwell name? It wasn't one of power anymore. It was one of ruin. And when the dust settled, when all was said and done, and we were finally standing in the ashes of their empire, Sophia turned to me one night, sitting on our new apartment balcony, and let out a slow breath. "We did it," she whispered. I reached for her hand, lacing my fingers through hers. We did. And as we sat there, the cool night breeze running over our skin, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I realized something. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't just about getting back at them, making them pay, ensuring they felt the weight of every wrong they had done. This was about freedom. Because for the first time in forever, Sophia wasn't looking over her shoulder. She wasn't trapped in a life dictated by someone else's rules. She was free. And me? I was right there with her. Untouchable. Victorious. And finally free. My fiancé texted, "Wedding's still on, but I'm spending the last few nights before with my ex-boyfriend for closure." I replied, "Do what you need to do." Then I called the venue and canceled everything. She found out at her bachelorette party when the venue called her about the cancellation, and then Wednesday afternoon hit me like a freight train carrying nothing but disappointment and lukewarm coffee. I was sitting at my desk in downtown Chicago, contemplating whether the fluorescent lights above me were specifically designed to suck the soul out of corporate drones like myself, when my phone decided to detonate my entire existence. I'd just wrapped up 3 back-to-back client meetings that felt like medieval torture sessions disguised as strategic planning discussions, and honestly, I was already questioning my life choices before my phone even buzzed. The notification popped up from Brooke Patterson, my fiancée, my supposed ride or die, the woman I was planning to legally bind myself to in exactly 3 days. 3 days. I was expecting the usual sweet nonsense she'd been bombarding me with for weeks. You know, the typical bride-to-be chaos. Did you confirm the flowers? Or my mom wants to move table 6 closer to the band? Or do you think ivory napkins clash with champagne tablecloths? The kind of questions that made me wonder if wedding planning was actually a form of advanced psychological warfare designed to break strong men. Instead, I got this absolute masterpiece of human audacity. Wedding's still on, but I'm spending the last few nights before with my ex-boyfriend for closure. I blinked at the screen like it was written in ancient hieroglyphics. Read it again. Nope, still said the same thing. My brain did that thing where it completely short-circuits and you just sit there like a deer in headlights. Except the headlights are attached to a garbage truck heading straight for your dignity. Derek. She was talking about Derek Morrison, the walking disaster she claimed she'd completely erased from her life like a bad tattoo. The guy she swore up and down was ancient history and totally irrelevant to our relationship. The same Derek who mysteriously kept popping up in her social media likes, and who somehow always managed to be at the same bars we frequented. Pure coincidence, right? Sure, Brooke. And I'm secretly Batman that I sat there staring at this text message like it might suddenly rearrange itself into something that made sense. Maybe autocorrect had gone rogue. Maybe she meant to send this to her therapist, or her diary, or literally anyone else on the planet besides the man she was supposed to marry in 72 hours. But no, This was definitely meant for me, because apparently I'd been dating someone who thought closure with an ex was a totally normal pre-wedding activity. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard like they were afraid to make contact. What exactly does one say to that? Thanks for the heads up, honey. Have fun with your emotional baggage. Should I pick up condoms for you too while I'm out? Great idea. Nothing says ready for marriage like a sleepover with your ex. Instead, my apparently masochistic fingers typed out, "Do what you need to do." I hit send and immediately wanted to throw my phone into the Chicago River. What the hell was wrong with me? Why didn't I respond with the righteous fury this situation clearly deserved? Why wasn't I demanding explanations or setting boundaries or doing literally anything that resembled having a backbone? Her response came back faster than a boomerang. "You're the best, Marcus. So mature and secure. This is why I'm marrying you." Oh, the irony was absolutely delicious. She was marrying me because I was mature and secure enough to let her shack up with her ex-boyfriend right before our wedding. What a catch I was. So mature, so secure, so completely spineless that I'd just given my blessing to what was essentially sanctioned cheating with a side of emotional manipulation that I put the phone down on my desk and stared at it like it might explode. The office around me continued its usual Wednesday afternoon hum. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, Karen from accounting laughing way too loudly at something that definitely wasn't that funny. Normal people doing normal things while my world imploded in real time via text message. The thing is, I knew instantly, and I mean immediately, like some kind of divine revelation, that the wedding was already dead. Not postponed, not complicated, not something we'd work through with couples therapy and awkward conversations. Dead, deceased, pushing up daisies. It had died the moment she hit send on that text, and honestly, it had probably been on life support for months. Because here's the thing about closure. It's the biggest load of crap ever invented by people who want to have their cake and eat it too. You don't need closure from someone you're truly over. You don't need to spend a few nights processing feelings that should have been handled before you accepted someone else's engagement ring. And you definitely don't announce this brilliant plan to your fiancé 3 days before the wedding like you're discussing dinner plans. Sitting there in my beige cubicle, surrounded by motivational posters about teamwork and synergy, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. Pure, crystalline clarity about exactly what I needed to do. The wedding was dead, but I was the only one who knew it yet. Brooke was off planning her little closure adventure, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just handed me the perfect exit strategy wrapped in her own selfish delusions that I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts. Time to start making some calls. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the DJ, every single vendor who was expecting to make our special day happen. Because if Brooke wanted closure, I was about to give her the most definitive closure she'd ever experienced. 3 days before what should have been the happiest day of my life, I was about to become a runaway groom. And honestly, I'd never felt more relieved about anything in my entire existence. My first call was to Lakeside Manor, the venue where we were supposed to pledge our eternal love in front of 150 witnesses who were about to get a front row seat to the greatest wedding cancellation in Chicago history. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. "Lakeside Manor, this is Jennifer. How can I make your special day perfect?" "This is Marcus Grant," I said, my voice surprisingly steady for someone who was about to torch his entire future. "Cancel everything for Saturday." The silence on the other end was so profound I could practically hear Jennifer's brain malfunctioning. "I'm sorry, did you say cancel?" "As in, the entire wedding." "That's exactly what I said. The whole shebang. Done. Finito. Over and out." Jennifer's professional composure cracked like a cheap vase hitting concrete. "Mr. Grant, I have to remind you that with less than 72 hours notice, you'll forfeit the entire deposit, plus we'll need to charge you for, I don't care," I interrupted, feeling a weird sense of liberation wash over me. "Charge whatever you want. Send the bill to Marcus Grant, same address you have on file. Just make sure nobody shows up expecting a wedding on Saturday, because it's not happening." After Jennifer finished sputtering about contracts and policies, I hung up and immediately dialed the honeymoon resort in Maui. Because nothing says dodged a bullet like canceling your romantic getaway to paradise where you would have spent a week pretending everything was fine while your new wife probably texted Derek about their amazing closure sessions. Aloha. Grand Wailea Resort. This is Kailani speaking. Hi Kailani, this is Marcus Grant. I need to cancel my honeymoon reservation for this weekend. Oh no, is everything okay? Did someone get sick? I almost laughed. You could say that. My fiancée came down with a severe case of needing closure with her ex-boyfriend, so we won't be needing that Ocean View suite after all. Poor Kailani didn't know what to do with that information. I'm so sorry to hear that, Mr. Grant. Let me check your cancellation policy. The next 2 hours became a masterclass in efficient relationship demolition. I called Bloom and Blossom Florists and told them to keep their overpriced roses. The DJ got the axe. Sorry, buddy. No need for your romantic playlist when the bride's making her own music with her ex. The caterer, Magnificent Meals, probably thought I'd lost my mind when I canceled their 5-course dinner for 150 people. But honestly, the only thing magnificent about this situation was how spectacularly it was falling apart. Each phone call felt like removing another weight from my shoulders. The photographer who was supposed to capture our magical moments canceled. The transportation company with their fancy vintage Rolls-Royce gone. The bar service that was going to keep everyone liquored up enough to pretend this was a good idea, not happening. Even the stupid ice sculpture of 2 swans that Brooke insisted we needed because it was symbolic, melted before it was even carved. The cake was the hardest call to make, not because I was emotional about it, but because Mrs. Henderson at Sweet Dreams Bakery had put her heart and soul into creating what she called a masterpiece of buttercream artistry. She'd been working on our 3-tier monstrosity for weeks, and I could hear her heart breaking through the phone when I told her to eat it herself or donate it to a homeless shelter. But Marcus, dear, I've already piped all the roses. The fondant bride and groom are perfect. Are you sure you can't work this out? Mrs. Henderson, the fondant groom is about to find himself in the same situation as the real one, abandoned for someone else. Trust me, this is for the best. By the time I was done making calls, my phone battery was dead and my conscience was surprisingly clear. I'd just systematically dismantled what was supposed to be the biggest day of my life, and instead of feeling devastated, I felt like I'd just escaped from prison. That's when I realized I needed to call Jordan Clark, my best man, and the only person stupid enough to agree to stand up there with me while I made the biggest mistake of my life. Jordan answered on the first ring, probably expecting some last-minute groomsman logistics. Yo, Marcus, please tell me you're not calling about the bachelor party again. I already told you, what happens in Vegas definitely did not stay in Vegas, and I have the photos to prove it. Jordan, I said, I need you to sit down. Dude, I'm at work. I can't just... Sit down, Jordan. Trust me on this one. I heard the squeak of his office chair. Okay, I'm sitting. You're starting to freak me out, man. What's going on? Instead of explaining, I forwarded him Brooke's text message, the one that had started this whole beautiful disaster. Then I waited, listening to the sound of Jordan reading and processing what was probably the most audacious pre-wedding communication in human history. The silence stretched on for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, in a voice that sounded like he was speaking to a small child who'd just eaten paint chips, Jordan said, She actually thought you'd say yes to that. Apparently, I'm just that mature and secure. Marcus, please tell me you didn't actually say yes to this insanity. I told her to do what she needed to do. Another pause. And then I canceled everything. The wedding's off, Jordan. Completely, totally, 100% off. I could practically hear Jordan's grin through the phone. Holy shit, dude. You actually did it. You pulled the plug on the whole thing. I need you to call the groomsmen. Let them know they can return their tuxes and make other plans for Saturday. The Marcus and Brooke show has been permanently canceled. This is the best news I've heard all year, Jordan said. I mean, I'm sorry you're going through this, but dude, you just dodged a nuclear missile. I'll call everyone right now. Thanks, man. I owe you one. You don't owe me anything. You just gave me the best story I'll ever tell at parties for the rest of my life. After hanging up with Jordan, I packed my stuff from the apartment Brooke and I shared. It was amazing how little of my actual life was intertwined with hers. My clothes, my books, my coffee maker that she always complained was too loud in the mornings. Everything fit into 3 boxes and a suitcase that I left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that read, "For closure." Then I walked out the door and never looked back. That night, while Brooke was out living her best bachelorette life downtown, completely oblivious to the fact that her wedding had been systematically dismantled like a house of cards in a hurricane. I was camped out at Jordan's apartment with him and his girlfriend Rachel, armed with enough snacks to survive a small apocalypse and the kind of morbid anticipation you usually reserve for watching disaster movies. Jordan's place was perfect for this kind of operation. A corner apartment with huge windows overlooking the city, a sectional couch that could comfortably seat a small army, and most importantly, excellent Wi-Fi for monitoring the incoming shitstorm. Rachel had gone full event coordinator mode, setting up what she called mission control on the coffee table, laptops, phone chargers, a notepad for keeping track of developments, and enough junk food to feed a fraternity house during finals week. This is either going to be the most epic meltdown in social media history, or absolutely nothing will happen and we'll all feel stupid, Rachel said, arranging bags of popcorn like she was preparing for a movie marathon. But honestly, based on what you've told us about Brooke, I'm betting on epic meltdown. Jordan was practically vibrating with excitement. Dude, I've been waiting for something like this my entire life. Remember in college when Sarah found out Brad was cheating through his Instagram story? This is going to be 10 times better. I had to admit, their enthusiasm was infectious. After spending months walking on eggshells around Brooke's increasingly dramatic wedding demands, it felt good to be around people who appreciated the sheer absurdity of what was happening. Plus, I'd already gone through the initial shock and anger during my vendor canceling spree. Now I was just curious to see how long it would take for reality to hit Brooke like a freight train carrying a load of her own poor life choices. I still can't believe she actually sent you that text, Rachel said, shaking her head. Like, what was the thought process there? Hey honey, I know we're getting married in 3 days, but I'm going to go bang my ex-boyfriend real quick for emotional reasons. Hope that's cool. The best part, Jordan added, is that she thought Marcus would just sit there and take it. Like he's some kind of doormat who'd be grateful she was even bothering to inform him about her extracurricular activities. I stretched out on the couch, feeling more relaxed than I had in weeks. You know what's funny? I think she genuinely believed I'd be okay with it. Like, in her mind, being mature and secure means letting your fiancée do whatever she wants without consequences. That's not mature, Rachel said. That's being a pushover. There's a difference between being understanding and being a human welcome mat. We'd strategically blocked Brooke and her entire wedding party from all our social media accounts, but Jordan had kept his phone open to monitor the situation. He'd set up a whole system, screenshots, screen recordings, the works. The man was more prepared than a war correspondent heading into a combat zone. So what's the timeline here? Rachel asked, consulting her notepad like she was planning a military operation. When do you think she'll figure out the wedding's been canceled? I checked my watch. The bachelorette party started at 7. Knowing Brooke, they'll spend the first few hours taking photos for Instagram, drinking overpriced cocktails, and talking about how blessed she is. The venue's automated system sends cancellation confirmations at 9:30, so we've got about an hour and a half of peace before all hell breaks loose, Jordan finished. Assuming she even checks her email during the party, Rachel pointed out. Some people actually put their phones away during special events. Jordan and I looked at her like she'd just suggested people might stop breathing for fun. You've met Brooke, right? Jordan said. The woman who live-tweeted her own engagement? She's not putting her phone away for anything. He was right, of course. Brooke was the kind of person who documented every moment of her life like she was running for president and needed proof of all her activities. Her Instagram story probably had more updates than a breaking news feed during a natural disaster. Plus, I added, she specifically requested to be copied on all vendor communications. She wanted to stay in the loop and make sure nothing went wrong. Well, congratulations, Brooke. You're definitely going to stay in the loop. We settled in to wait, making predictions about how the night would unfold. Rachel thought Brooke would call me first, probably screaming. Jordan was betting on a complete social media meltdown with angry posts and dramatic proclamations. I was leaning toward a full-scale family intervention, complete with her mother Helen showing up at Jordan's door, demanding explanations. What I don't understand, Rachel said, opening a bag of chips, is why Derek went along with this plan. Like, what guy thinks it's a good idea to sleep with someone else's fiancée 3 days before their wedding? The kind of guy who's been trying to break them up for months, Jordan replied. Think about it. He gets to play the supportive ex-boyfriend while simultaneously sabotaging her relationship. It's actually kind of brilliant, in a completely psychotic way. Except he didn't count on Marcus having a spine, I pointed out. His whole plan depended on me being too pathetic to do anything about it. Their plan, Rachel corrected. Don't forget, Brooke was in on this too. She probably thought she could have her cake and eat it too. Marry you for stability and keep Derek around for whatever pathetic emotional validation she gets from him. The more we talked about it, the clearer it became that this whole situation had been brewing for months. All those times Derek mysteriously showed up places. All those conversations about closure and unresolved feelings. All those moments when Brooke seemed distracted or defensive when I asked about her past relationships. It hadn't been paranoia or insecurity on my part. It had been pattern recognition. You know what the really messed up part is? I said, grabbing a handful of popcorn. If she'd just been honest about still having feelings for Derek, we could have broken up like normal people. Instead, she decided to string me along right up until the wedding, like I was some kind of backup plan. That's what narcissists do, Rachel said matter-of-factly. They keep people around as options while they explore other opportunities. The engagement ring was probably just insurance in case things didn't work out with Derek. Jordan's phone buzzed with a notification, and we all froze like we'd been caught doing something illegal. He checked the screen and grinned. It's starting. At exactly 9:23 p.m., Jordan's phone lit up like a Christmas tree having an electrical malfunction. We'd been sitting there for over 2 hours, munching on snacks and making increasingly ridiculous predictions about how Brooke's night would implode, when the automated email system at Lakeside Manor decided to drop its little digital bomb right into her perfectly curated bachelorette party. Oh shit, here we go, Jordan said, his eyes glued to his phone screen. The venue just sent the cancellation notice. Rachel leaned over his shoulder, practically vibrating with anticipation. Did she see it yet? Give it a minute, I said, feeling weirdly calm about the whole thing. She's probably too busy posing for photos to check her email immediately. I was right, of course. Brooke's Instagram story had been updating every 15 minutes like clockwork since 7 o'clock. The progression was almost artistic in its predictability. Pre-party shots of her getting ready in a white satin robe that probably cost more than most people's rent. Arrival photos at the rooftop bar in matching Bride Tribe shirts that made everyone look like they were advertising a cult. Group shots with overpriced cocktails that came with sparklers because apparently regular drinks weren't extra enough for this crowd. Her maid of honor, Gretchen Morrison, yes, Derek's sister, because apparently this whole situation needed an extra layer of family drama, had been documenting everything with the enthusiasm of a war correspondent covering the liberation of Paris. The photos showed 12 women in various shades of pink and white, all grinning like they'd just won the lottery, while Brooke held court in the center wearing a tiara that looked like it came from a children's dress-up box. Look at this, Jordan said, showing us his screen. Posted 20 minutes ago. My girls got me the perfect tiara because I'm literally a princess tonight. 3 more days until I become Mrs. Grant. The irony is just chef's kiss. Then, at 9:31 p.m., the tone of Gretchen's posts took a sharp left turn into panic territory. Is Marcus with you guys tonight? Brooke's freaking out about something and won't tell us what's wrong. And there it is, Rachel said, clapping her hands together. The moment reality crashed into fantasy land. What happened next was like watching a car accident in slow motion. If car accidents involved designer cocktails and women in matching t-shirts instead of actual vehicles. Jordan kept screenshot capturing everything as the updates got progressively more frantic. Gretchen's posts went from confused to concerned to borderline hysterical in the span of about 10 minutes. OMG, something is seriously wrong. Brooke just locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. She's crying and screaming about Marcus ruining everything. What is happening? The bathroom breakdown, I observed. Classic Brooke move. Whenever she can't control a situation, she retreats to the nearest lockable room and has a complete meltdown. Should we feel bad about this? Rachel asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't feeling particularly guilty. About what? About her finally facing the consequences of her own actions? Nah, I'm good, I replied, grabbing another handful of popcorn. The real entertainment started when Brooke's mother, Helen Patterson, began her assault on everyone's voicemail. Jordan had the brilliant idea to put his phone on speaker so we could all enjoy the increasingly unhinged messages as they came in. Message 1, 9:47 p.m. Jordan, this is Helen Patterson. I need you to call me immediately. There's been some kind of misunderstanding about the wedding arrangements, and I need to speak with Marcus right away. Message 2, 9:52 p.m. Jordan, I don't know what kind of childish game Marcus is playing, but he needs to stop this nonsense immediately. He's ruining my daughter's life over nothing. Call me back. Message 3, 10:08 p.m. This is absolutely ridiculous. Marcus is being completely unreasonable and childish. We have 150 guests flying in from all over the country, and he's throwing a tantrum like a spoiled brat. We'll sue him for every penny of those deposits if he doesn't fix this immediately. The legal threats, Rachel noted. Right on schedule. When narcissists can't manipulate, they always go straight to intimidation. Except all the contracts are in my name, I pointed out. Good luck suing me for canceling my own wedding. Message 4 was where Helen really let her true colors show. Fine, if that's how he wants to play it. We'll have the wedding without him. Brooke deserves better than some paranoid, insecure little boy who can't handle a mature woman having closure with her past. Oh, this is getting good, Jordan said, rubbing his hands together like he was about to watch his favorite movie. But the real cherry on top of this disaster Sunday came when Derek himself decided to get involved. At 10:23 p.m., he actually had the audacity to text Jordan directly, as if they were old buddies who regularly chatted about relationship drama. Hey man, can we talk? This whole thing is getting out of hand. Brooke is hysterical, and I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can you ask Marcus to call me? We need to have a man-to-man conversation about this. Jordan looked at me with raised eyebrows. Want me to respond? Go for it, I said. But keep it classy. Jordan's fingers flew over his keyboard. My guy, you literally told the groom you'd be sleeping over with his bride 3 days before the wedding. What exactly did you think would happen? That he'd send you a fruit basket and a thank you note? The response came back almost immediately. It's not like that. It's complicated. Brooke has unresolved feelings, and she needed closure before she could fully commit to Marcus. I was just trying to help her work through her emotions. Oh, how noble of you, Rachel said sarcastically. What a selfless act of service, sleeping with someone else's fiancé to help her work through her feelings. Jordan typed back, Dude, if you're going to home wreck, at least own it. Don't insult everyone's intelligence by pretending you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. Meanwhile, the Instagram updates from the bachelorette party had completely stopped. The last post was from 9:19 p.m., a group shot of everyone toasting with champagne, captioned, To new beginnings and happily ever after. The timestamp made it even more perfect. They'd been celebrating right up until the moment the cancellation email arrived. I kind of feel bad for the other girls, Rachel said. They probably have no idea what's going on. They're just there to celebrate their friend's wedding, and suddenly, she's having a complete breakdown in a bathroom. Don't feel too bad, I replied. Half of them have been dealing with Brooke's drama for years. This is probably just Tuesday for them. By 10:45 p.m., the messages had stopped coming. Either Brooke's phone had died, she'd thrown it in the Chicago River, or someone had physically restrained her from sending any more unhinged communications. The silence was almost more ominous than the chaos had been. Think it's over? Rachel asked. Jordan and I looked at each other and started laughing. Oh, this isn't even close to over, I said. This is just the opening act. Tomorrow's going to be the real show. Thursday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train carrying a cargo load of fresh bullshit, and Brooke was apparently the conductor. I woke up on Jordan's couch to 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and what can only be described as the most creative work of fiction I'd ever seen posted on social media. Rachel was already up, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at her laptop screen with the kind of fascination usually reserved for watching natural disasters unfold. Marcus, she said without looking up, you need to see this. Brooke just posted what might be the most delusional thing I've ever read on Facebook. I shuffled over, still in yesterday's clothes and feeling like I'd been hit by a truck driven by my own poor life choices. On Rachel's screen was a Facebook post that had apparently gone live at 6:47 a.m. because nothing says stable mental state like crafting elaborate lies before most people have had their morning coffee. With a heavy heart, the post began. I'm announcing that our wedding has been postponed due to Marcus's ongoing mental health struggles. Over the past few weeks, Marcus has become increasingly paranoid and has been making false accusations about my friendships and my past. While this is heartbreaking and devastating, I believe in standing by the people we love during their darkest moments. I'm committed to supporting Marcus through whatever he's going through, even if it means delaying our special day. Please keep us both in your thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. Love conquers all. Hashtag stand by your man. Hashtag mental health matters. Hashtag love wins. I stared at the screen for a full 30 seconds, my brain trying to process the sheer audacity of what I was reading. She's actually claiming I'm mentally ill because I didn't want her sleeping with her ex-boyfriend before our wedding? It gets better, Jordan said, appearing from the kitchen with his own coffee. Look at the comments. She's got a whole support network going of people who apparently think you're a controlling psychopath. Sure enough, the post already had 47 likes and 23 comments, mostly from people I'd never met offering their thoughts and prayers and praising Brooke for being such a strong, supportive woman during my apparent psychological breakdown. Her Aunt Diane had commented, "You're an angel for standing by him, sweetie. Some men just can't handle strong women." Her college roommate added, "Mental health is so important. You're doing the right thing by getting him help." "This is incredible," Rachel said, scrolling through the responses. "She's actually convinced people that you canceled your own wedding because you're having a nervous breakdown, not because she told you she was going to cheat on you." "The best defense is a good offense," I said, feeling a familiar rage building in my chest. Can't be the villain if you paint yourself as the victim first. But here's the thing about the internet in 2025, screenshots are forever, and the truth has a way of surfacing faster than a dead fish in a shallow pond. I pulled out my phone and opened Facebook for the first time in months, because sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, and Brooke had just brought a flamethrower to what should have been a civil conversation. My post was simple, direct, and included all the receipts. No paranoia, no breakdown, no false accusations, just facts. My fiancée informed me via text that she would be spending her last 2 nights before our wedding with her ex-boyfriend for closure. I canceled our wedding. That's it. That's the whole story. Then I attached a screenshot of Brooke's original text message, timestamp and all, followed by another screenshot of her response calling me mature and secure for agreeing to let her bang Derek Morrison before we exchanged vows. That I hit post and sat back to watch democracy in action. The response was immediate and absolutely beautiful. Within 5 minutes, my post had more likes than Brooke's, and the comments were rolling in faster than I could read them. "Brooke told you what?" From my cousin Sarah. "Holy shit, dude. You dodged a bullet." From my college buddy Mike. "This woman is absolutely insane." From Rachel's sister, who I'd met exactly once at a barbecue. But the real nail in Brooke's coffin came from an unexpected source. Derek's father, Robert Morrison, had apparently been dealing with his own family drama and decided to share some information that completely obliterated whatever credibility Derek might have had left. Robert posted on his own Facebook page, and someone tagged me in it within minutes. "For anyone following the drama with my son Derek and the canceled Patterson Grant wedding, I feel compelled to share some facts. Derek has been lying to everyone, including the Patterson family, about having cancer. The medical emergency that supposedly brought him and Brooke back together? Complete fabrication. He's been using this lie to manipulate people for months. I found out yesterday when I called his oncologist to offer support. There is no oncologist. There is no cancer. There is no medical crisis. There's just my son being a manipulative piece of garbage, and I'm done covering for him." The post included photos from a golf tournament Derek had played in the weekend before, looking perfectly healthy and celebrating his hole-in-one with a beer that definitely wasn't prescribed by any cancer doctor. "Oh my God," Rachel said, reading over my shoulder. "Derek's been faking cancer to get sympathy from Brooke. And now his own father is exposing him on social media," Jordan added. "This keeps getting better and better." Within an hour, the entire narrative had flipped. Brooke's post was being shared and mocked across multiple friend groups, with people commenting things like, "Did you really think nobody would fact-check this?" and "Girl, the screenshots don't lie." Someone had even created a side-by-side comparison of her post and my screenshots with the caption, "When keeping it real goes wrong." The best part was watching Brooke try to control the damage in real time. She started deleting comments that didn't support her narrative, then deleted the entire post when the negative responses outnumbered the supportive ones. Then she posted again, this time claiming her account had been hacked and that someone was spreading lies about her. But the internet had already done its thing. Screenshots of her original post were circulating, along with my response and Derek's father's cancer revelation. The whole story was spreading faster than gossip at a small-town hair salon, and there was absolutely nothing Brooke could do to stop it. Her second post lasted about 20 minutes before she deleted that too. Then her third post, a rambling essay about toxic masculinity and emotional abuse, disappeared after 30 minutes. By noon, she'd given up on Facebook entirely and made her Instagram account private. But the damage was already done. My phone was buzzing constantly with messages from friends, family members, and even people I barely knew, all expressing their shock and support. I never liked her anyway, my sister texted. She always seemed fake. My mom called to make sure I was okay and to tell me she'd already told everyone at her book club what had happened. The best message came from my grandmother. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Come over for dinner Sunday, and I'll make your favorite pot roast. You're better off without that floozy. Gotta love Grandma's no-nonsense approach to relationship advice. Thursday night at Jordan's apartment felt like being inside a fortress under siege, except instead of medieval armies, we were dealing with an angry mob of wedding guests who apparently thought showing up unannounced was a totally reasonable response to having their Saturday plans canceled. I was sprawled on the couch, finally starting to relax after watching Brooke's reputation get absolutely demolished on social media all day, when Jordan's Ring doorbell started going absolutely berserk. What the hell? Jordan said, checking his phone. Someone's at the door. The video feed showed what can only be described as the most pathetic war party ever assembled. Leading the charge was Helen Patterson, Brooke's mother, dressed like she was heading to a country club board meeting rather than staging an intervention. Behind her stood Roger, Brooke's dad, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else on earth. Gretchen was there too, still wearing her Bride Tribe shirt from the night before, which was either dedication or a complete inability to read the room. And bringing up the rear, like the world's most unwelcome surprise guest, was Derek Morrison himself. But the real star of this shit show was Brooke, front and center, still wearing her bachelorette party tiara, because apparently accessories are the most important thing when you're having a public meltdown. This is actually happening, Rachel whispered, peering over Jordan's shoulder at the phone screen. They actually formed a posse and came here. The doorbell rang again, followed by aggressive knocking that sounded like Helen was trying to beat down the door with her perfectly manicured fists. Jordan pressed the intercom button on his phone, and suddenly we could hear the circus that was happening in his hallway. Jordan Clark, I know you're in there. Helen's voice came through the speaker, shrill and demanding. We need to speak with Marcus immediately. This has gone on long enough. Ma'am, this is a private residence, Jordan replied through the intercom, his voice perfectly calm and professional. You need to leave. Don't you dare ma'am me, young man. Helen shot back. Do you have any idea what your friend has done? We have 150 guests flying in from all over the country for a wedding that's supposed to happen in 2 days. Roger stepped forward, looking like he was about to negotiate a hostage situation. Jordan, please. We just want to talk. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. Maybe we can work something out. Work something out. I said to Jordan. What are we? Negotiating a business merger. Through the speaker, we could hear Brooke's voice, high-pitched and hysterical. Marcus is being completely unreasonable. All I wanted was closure. I wasn't going to actually do anything with Derek. Then why did you ask to spend 2 nights with him? Jordan asked through the intercom, and I had to give him credit for cutting straight to the heart of the matter. That's when Derek decided to chime in, because apparently this situation wasn't already ridiculous enough. Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we just talk this out, man to man? I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. Jordan looked at me with raised eyebrows. I shook my head and made a throat-slitting gesture. No way in hell was I having a man-to-man conversation with the guy who'd been plotting to sleep with my fiancée while pretending to have cancer. Derek, Jordan said into the intercom, you're literally the last person who should be talking to him right now. You told the groom you'd be sleeping over with his bride. What exactly did you think was going to happen? It's not like that, Derek protested. We have history. She needed to process her feelings before she could fully commit to someone else. By processing, you mean sleeping with her, Rachel called out, loud enough for the intercom to pick up. Gretchen's voice joined the chorus. This is all just a big misunderstanding. Brooke loves Marcus. She's always loved Marcus. Derek was just helping her work through some unresolved emotions. Unresolved emotions, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Helen making increasingly ridiculous demands and threats. She wanted me to come downstairs and discuss this like adults. She wanted Jordan to stop enabling Marcus's childish behavior. She wanted the wedding to happen as planned because too much money had already been spent, and what would people think? The best part was when she started making legal threats again. We'll sue you for emotional distress. We'll sue you for the deposits. We'll sue you for everything you're worth. Ma'am, Jordan replied, you can't sue someone for canceling their own wedding. Also, I'm pretty sure emotional distress requires proving that the person actually caused the distress, not just responded appropriately to it. That's when Brooke completely lost it. Through the intercom, we could hear her screaming at the top of her lungs. This is insane. I was doing Marcus a favor by marrying him. He should be grateful that someone like me even wanted to be with someone like him. And there it is, Rachel said quietly. The truth finally comes out. I could have had anyone. Brooke continued. Derek has been begging me to come back to him for years. I chose Marcus because I thought he was stable and secure, but he's just as crazy and jealous as every other guy I've dated. Wow, I said. She's really selling herself as quite the catch there. Roger's voice came through next, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely embarrassed. Brooke, honey, maybe we should go home and talk about this privately. No, she shrieked. I'm not leaving until Marcus comes down here and explains himself. He owes me that much. Actually, Jordan said through the intercom, he doesn't owe you anything. But I'll tell you what, security is on their way up, so you might want to start heading toward the elevator. That wasn't actually true, but it had the desired effect. We could hear Helen sputtering indignantly and Roger trying to convince everyone to leave before things got worse. Gretchen was arguing with Derek about whether they should wait for security or just leave, and through it all, Brooke was still screaming about how unfair everything was. The final nail in the coffin came when Derek tried one last desperate appeal. Marcus, if you're listening, just give me 5 minutes to explain. This whole thing got blown way out of proportion. Brooke and I have a connection that goes back years, and she needed to explore that before she could fully commit to you. I was just trying to help her be sure about her decision. Jordan's response was absolutely perfect. Dude, you just admitted you were trying to steal another man's fiancée. On camera, while standing outside his friend's apartment building. At 10 o'clock at night. Wearing yesterday's clothes. Maybe it's time to reevaluate your life choices. Within 5 minutes, building security actually did show up, and we watched through the Ring camera as the whole pathetic group was escorted toward the elevators. Brooke's last words, screamed over her shoulder as they disappeared from view, were, "You'll regret this forever, Marcus. You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Somehow, I said, settling back into the couch, I doubt that. Friday rolled around with all the pomp and circumstance of a funeral march, which was pretty fitting considering we were supposed to be having our rehearsal dinner at the Oakwood Country Club that evening. Instead of practicing wedding vows and toasting to our future happiness, I was sitting in Jordan's kitchen eating leftover Chinese takeout and watching Brooke's world continue to implode in spectacular fashion. The day started quietly enough. Too quietly, actually. After Thursday night's doorbell invasion, I was expecting some kind of escalation, but my phone had been surprisingly silent all morning. No angry texts, no voicemails from Helen threatening legal action, no social media posts claiming I'd been possessed by demons or abducted by aliens. It was almost unsettling. This is the calm before the storm, Rachel said, sipping her coffee and scrolling through her phone. Brooke's not the type to just give up and accept defeat. She's planning something. She was right, of course. At exactly 2:30 p.m., my phone rang with a call from the Oakwood Country Club. I recognized the number because I called them Wednesday to cancel our rehearsal dinner reservation, along with everything else on our wedding weekend itinerary. Mr. Grant, this is Patricia from Oakwood Country Club, the voice said, sounding frazzled and confused. I'm calling because we have a situation here, and I need to verify some information with you. What kind of situation? I asked, though I had a pretty good idea where this was heading. Well, sir, we have a woman here claiming to be your fiancée, and she's insisting that your rehearsal dinner is still on for tonight. She's with an older woman who says she's the mother of the bride, and they're demanding that we honor your reservation. They're saying there was some kind of miscommunication about the cancellation. I could hear shouting in the background, and Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper. Mr. Grant, I have to ask, did you actually cancel this reservation, or was there some kind of mistake? I absolutely canceled it, I said. Wednesday afternoon, around 3 o'clock. I spoke with someone named Jennifer, I think. The reservation was completely canceled, and I was told there would be cancellation fees. That's what our records show, Patricia confirmed. But these women are insisting it's a mistake, and they're causing quite a scene. The older woman is demanding to speak with the manager and threatening to charge everything to your credit card. My credit card. I laughed. Patricia, I need you to understand something very clearly. I am not getting married tomorrow. There is no wedding. There is no rehearsal dinner. These women are not authorized to use my credit card for anything, and if they try, it's fraud. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I understand completely. Should I call security? Through the phone, I could hear Helen's voice getting louder and more indignant. This is absolutely ridiculous. We've been planning this event for months. You cannot treat paying customers this way. Patricia, I said. Yes, please call security. And if they refuse to leave, call the police. I want this documented in case they try to pull any more stunts. 20 minutes later, Patricia called me back. Mr. Grant, I wanted to follow up. We did have to call the police to escort them off the property. The younger woman became quite belligerent when we explained that the reservation was canceled, and the older woman actually tried to physically push past our hostess to get to the private dining room. Are you serious? Unfortunately, yes. The police report is being filed as trespassing and attempted fraud. They tried to force us to charge your card for services you'd already canceled. The officer said this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think with canceled weddings. I thanked Patricia and hung up, feeling a weird mix of vindication and secondhand embarrassment. How desperate do you have to be to show up at a venue you know has been canceled and try to force them to honor a reservation that doesn't exist? But the real entertainment came later that afternoon when my phone rang again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Marcus. The voice was hesitant, embarrassed. This is Roger. Roger Patterson. Brooke's dad. The man who'd looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor during Thursday night's apartment invasion. Hi, Roger, I said, genuinely curious about what he could possibly want to discuss. Listen, son, he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Is this really what you want? Is this how you want this whole thing to end? For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. Roger had always seemed like a decent guy who'd gotten stuck in the middle of his wife and daughter's drama. But then I remembered why we were having this conversation in the first place. Roger, did you see Brooke's text message? The one where she told me she was going to spend 2 nights with her ex-boyfriend before our wedding. Silence on the other end. Because I've got screenshots if you want to see them, I continued, along with her response calling me mature and secure for letting her do it. More silence. And did you know that Derek has been lying about having cancer? That the whole medical emergency that brought them back together was completely fake? A long sigh. Yeah, I saw Robert's post yesterday about Derek faking the cancer thing. So knowing all that, do you really think I should marry your daughter tomorrow? The pause stretched on for so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Roger spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. No. No. I guess I wouldn't want my son to marry someone who did that to him. I appreciate your honesty, Roger. I really do. Marcus, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I knew Helen was encouraging this whole closure thing with Derek. She thought he had money, thought maybe Brooke could do better. I should have said something, but... He trailed off. But what? But I've been thinking about divorce for 2 years, and I didn't want to rock the boat until after the wedding. Guess that doesn't matter now. Holy shit. Brooke's parents were getting divorced too? This day just kept getting better and better. I'm sorry to hear that, Roger. But maybe this is all for the best. For everyone. Yeah, he said sadly. Maybe it is. Take care of yourself, Marcus. You're a good kid, and you deserve better than this circus. After he hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, trying to process everything that had happened. In the span of 3 days, I'd canceled my wedding, watched my ex-fiancée have multiple public meltdowns, been threatened with lawsuits, had my mental health questioned on social media, gotten invaded by angry relatives, and now learned that my almost-in-laws were splitting up too. And somehow, despite all the chaos and drama, I felt better than I had in months. "Everything okay?" Jordan asked, walking into the kitchen. "Yeah," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "Everything's actually pretty great." Friday night was supposed to be our rehearsal dinner. Instead, I was sitting in Jordan's living room eating pizza and watching what can only be described as the most spectacular social media meltdown in human history unfold in real time on Instagram Live. If someone had told me a week ago that I'd be spending the night before my wedding watching my ex-fiancée have a complete psychological breakdown on the internet, I would have recommended they seek professional help. But here we were, living in the timeline where nothing made sense and everything was simultaneously horrible and hilarious. The IT started around 9 o'clock. Rachel was the first to notice, frantically waving her phone at us from across the room. "Oh my God, you guys, Brooke just went live on Instagram. And she's drunk. Very, very drunk." The three of us huddled around Rachel's phone like we were watching the final episode of our favorite TV show. The video quality was shaky, clearly being filmed on a phone that wasn't being held steady, and the lighting was terrible. But there was Brooke, sitting on what was obviously Derek's couch. I recognized that hideous abstract art on the wall behind her from his social media posts, wearing her bachelorette party tiara and holding a glass of wine that was definitely not her first of the evening. "Hi, everyone." She slurred into the camera, her makeup smudged and her hair looking like she'd been running her hands through it for hours. "I wanted to go live tonight to tell you all the truth about what's really happening with my wedding tomorrow." "Oh, this is going to be good," Jordan said, settling in with his own slice of pizza. "Marcus Grant," she continued, saying my name like it tasted bad, "has completely ruined my life. All I wanted was closure with someone who meant a lot to me, and he turned it into this whole big thing. Like, literally all I wanted was to spend a couple nights with Derek to make sure I was making the right decision about getting married, and Marcus completely freaked out." The comments section was already going crazy. I could see them flying by. Most of them were not supportive. "Girl, what are you even saying right now? Are you seriously admitting to cheating? This is why he left you." But Brooke was either too drunk or too delusional to notice. She kept going, digging her hole deeper with every word. "People keep acting like I did something wrong, but I was trying to be honest. I could have just gone behind Marcus's back, but I told him what I was doing because I thought he was mature enough to understand. I thought he was secure enough in our relationship to let me have closure with my past." "Let her have closure," Rachel repeated. "With her past," while wearing his engagement ring. The train wreck continued for another 10 minutes, with Brooke alternating between crying and ranting about how unfair everything was. She talked about how Derek was the love of her life, but she'd chosen Marcus because he was stable and reliable. She complained about having to cancel all her wedding plans and how embarrassing it was to tell people the wedding was off. "I could have had anyone," she said, taking another sip of wine. "Derek has been wanting me back for years. He told me he'd do anything to be with me again. And I chose Marcus because I thought we could build a good life together. But he's just as jealous and insecure as every other guy I've dated." The comments were brutal. "So you settled for him? You're literally at Derek's place right now. This is the worst apology video ever." But the absolute best part came when Derek himself appeared in the background of the video. You could see him in the kitchen, frantically gesturing for Brooke to stop talking, but she was completely oblivious. The comments immediately picked up on it. "Is that Derek behind you? Girl, you're literally proving his point." That's when Brooke really lost it. Someone in the comments asked why she was at Derek's apartment if this was all just about closure, and she completely snapped. "Because Marcus kicked me out," she screamed at the phone. "He packed up all his stuff and left me with nothing. He canceled our apartment lease, and I had nowhere else to go. Derek is the only person who actually cares about me and supports me through this." "Wait," I said, pausing with a piece of pizza halfway to my mouth. "She's telling people I kicked her out? I left. She kept the apartment." "Facts don't matter when you're having a mental breakdown on Instagram Live," Rachel pointed out. The video kept getting worse. Brooke started crying again, mascara running down her face, talking about how she'd given up so much for our relationship and how ungrateful I was. She claimed she'd turned down job opportunities and moved to Chicago just to be with me, which was interesting since she'd already been living here when we met and had never mentioned any job opportunities elsewhere. Then Derek made his big mistake. He tried to intervene, walking into frame and reaching for Brooke's phone. "Babe, maybe you should stop. You're making this worse." "Babe," Jordan repeated. Did he just call her babe on her live video? The comment section exploded. Did he just call you babe? You're literally with your ex right now. This is why Marcus left you. You're proving everything he said. But Brooke was too far gone to care. She turned the camera toward Derek, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. "This is Derek," she announced. "The man who actually loves me and supports me unconditionally. Unlike some people who run away the minute things get complicated." Derek's face went white. "Brooke, turn off the phone. Please." "No," she said, turning the camera back to herself. "I want everyone to know the truth. Marcus is a coward who couldn't handle being with a real woman who has a past. Derek understands me. Derek accepts me for who I am." The whole thing devolved from there. Derek kept trying to get Brooke to end the video while she got increasingly belligerent and defensive. At one point, she actually started reading the negative comments out loud and responding to them, which just made everything worse. "You're literally cheating right now," she read. "I'm not cheating. I'm single. Marcus broke up with me, remember? I can do whatever I want." "This is so embarrassing," she continued. "Girl, stop talking." "Why should I stop talking? Everyone wants to judge me, but nobody wants to hear my side of the story." The final nail in the coffin came when someone in the comments pointed out that Derek's apartment walls were visible behind her, and they'd seen his address posted on social media before. "You're at Derek's place on what should have been your rehearsal dinner." The comment read that Brooke's response was to pan the camera around Derek's living room, showing off his terrible furniture and that god-awful abstract art. "Yeah, I'm at Derek's place. So what? At least someone wants me here." The video finally ended when Derek physically took the phone away from her, but not before she managed to slur out one final message. "Marcus Grant, if you're watching this, you're going to regret leaving me for the rest of your pathetic life." The silence in Jordan's living room was deafening. "Well," Rachel said finally, "that happened. Did she just confess to everything on live video?" I asked. "And then some," Jordan replied. "I don't think she could have made herself look worse if she'd tried." By the time we went to bed, the video had been screen recorded and shared across multiple platforms. Whatever reputation Brooke had left was officially gone. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect autumn day that wedding planners dream about and brides spend months praying for. Ironically, it was absolutely gorgeous weather for a wedding that was never going to happen. Instead of waking up in some overpriced hotel suite, surrounded by groomsmen making terrible jokes and downing mimosas to calm pre-wedding jitters, I was sitting on the deck of a mountain resort 2 hours outside Chicago, breathing in fresh pine air and feeling more at peace than I had in months. I'd driven up to Pine Ridge Lodge Friday night after Brooke's spectacular Instagram Live meltdown, needing to get as far away from the Chicago drama as possible. The resort was one of those places where people go to disconnect from reality. No cell service unless you're near the main lodge, hiking trails that make you forget civilization exists, and a general atmosphere of your problems can't find you here. It was exactly what I needed while my former life imploded back in the city.my phone, which I'd left charging in the room, had been mercifully quiet all morning. The beauty of being in the middle of nowhere was that whatever fresh hell Brooke and her circus were creating, it couldn't reach me until I was ready to deal with it. I was sipping coffee and watching eagles circle over the lake when I finally decided to check my messages around noon. Holy shit. Apparently, while I was enjoying my peaceful mountain retreat, absolute chaos had erupted back at Lakeside Manor. Despite my canceling everything 3 days ago, despite the venue confirming the cancellation, despite multiple people being informed that there was no wedding happening, somehow 30 people had still shown up in full wedding attire expecting to see me pledge my eternal love to a woman who was probably hungover at her ex-boyfriend's apartment. The messages from Jordan painted a picture so absurd it could have been a Saturday Night Live sketch. Brooke and Helen had apparently told select family members that the wedding was just postponed, not canceled, and that everything would work itself out by Saturday. They'd convinced Brooke's grandmother, her aunts and uncles, a handful of cousins, and even some of her college friends to show up anyway because Marcus would come to his senses. But here's where it got really good. Lakeside Manor, being a popular venue, had booked another event in our place, a corporate retreat for some tech companies celebrating their quarterly achievements. So when Brooke's relatives showed up expecting to find a wedding ceremony, they instead walked into a room full of software engineers wearing matching polo shirts and discussing customer acquisition metrics. "Dude," Jordan had texted, "you should see the photos Rachel's getting from her friend who works at the venue." Brooke's grandmother showed up in a floor-length purple dress and a fascinator, demanding to know where the bridal party was. Meanwhile, there's a guy in khakis giving a PowerPoint presentation about user engagement in the background. It's surreal. The venue staff, God bless them, had tried to explain that there was no wedding scheduled, but Helen had apparently gone full Karen mode, demanding to speak with managers and threatening to sue everyone in sight. Security had to be called when she tried to force her way into the conference room where the tech bros were trying to enjoy their team-building exercises. But the absolute crown jewel of this disaster was what happened when Derek's father, Robert Morrison, showed up. Apparently, Derek had been telling his parents that he was getting married to Brooke, conveniently leaving out the small detail that she was supposed to be marrying someone else first. Robert had driven 4 hours from Milwaukee, wearing his best suit and carrying a wedding gift, expecting to watch his son finally settle down with a nice girl. Instead, he walked into a clusterfuck of confused wedding guests, corporate retreat attendees, and venue staff trying to manage the chaos. When he asked where Derek was, someone helpfully informed him that Derek was probably at home with his fiancée, who had just canceled her wedding to another man 3 days ago. According to the reports I was getting, Robert had stood there for a full minute processing this information before asking to speak with Helen Patterson. The conversation that followed was apparently loud enough to be heard over the corporate team's trust fall exercises. "Your daughter was supposed to marry someone else today?" Robert had asked, his voice carrying across the entire venue. "It's complicated," Helen had replied, probably realizing that her carefully constructed narrative was about to collapse. "And my son was involved with her while she was engaged to this other man. Derek and Brooke have a special connection. My son helped break up an engagement?" Robert's voice was getting louder. "My son, who I raised to be a decent human being, was sleeping with another man's fiancée?" That's when Helen made her fatal mistake. "Your son has cancer." Brooke was just being supportive during his medical crisis. The silence that followed was apparently so complete that even the tech bros stopped their presentation to see what was happening. Robert stood there, staring at Helen, before pulling out his phone and calling Derek right there in front of everyone. "Derek," he said, loud enough for half the venue to hear, "I'm standing in a place where you're supposed to be getting married today, except there's no wedding because the bride was apparently already engaged to someone else. And this woman is telling me you have cancer. So I have one question for you. What the fuck is going on?" The phone conversation lasted about 30 seconds before Robert hung up and turned back to Helen and the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "my son does not have cancer. He has never had cancer. He's been lying to manipulate this woman and destroy her relationship with her fiancée. And as of right now, he's no longer my son." Then he walked out, leaving his wedding gift on the reception table and Helen standing there with her mouth open like a fish out of water. The police were called for the second time in 3 days, and the whole group was finally escorted off the property. But the damage was done. Brooke's family had witnessed the complete exposure of Derek's lies, Helen's manipulation tactics, and the utter insanity of their entire plan. The best part, according to Jordan's updates, was that Brooke's sister Diana had been recording the whole thing on her phone. By the time I was reading these messages, clips of Robert disowning Derek and Helen's shocked reaction were already circulating on social media. Diana had even sent a message to Jordan. "Please tell Marcus I'm sorry for my family's insanity. This is completely unhinged, and I'm done with all of them. Also, can you send me his address? I want to return the wedding gift I bought. He deserves better than this circus." As I sat there reading about the spectacular finale to what should have been my wedding day, I felt something I didn't expect: gratitude. Not just relief, not just vindication, but genuine gratitude that Brooke had sent me that text on Wednesday. Because if she hadn't, I would have married into this family of manipulative, delusional people and probably spent years trying to figure out why I was so miserable. Instead, I was sitting on a mountain, breathing clean air, and watching my former problems destroy themselves without any help from me. It was the best wedding day I never had. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, a beautiful corner unit in Lincoln Park that I could actually afford now that I wasn't splitting everything with someone who considered a $300 throw pillow a necessity, scrolling through my phone and marveling at how completely my life had transformed. The autumn sunlight was streaming through windows that were actually clean because I'd learned to take care of my own space, and my coffee tasted better than it ever had when I was sharing a kitchen with someone who criticized my brewing technique daily. The aftermath of what I'd started calling the Great Wedding Disaster of 2025 had been almost poetic in its justice. Brooke and Derek were still together, if you could call what they had together. Last I'd heard through the Chicago Gossip Network, they were living in Derek's basement studio apartment because Brooke had been evicted from our old place after missing 3 months of rent. Apparently, when you spend all your time having dramatic meltdowns on social media instead of going to work, employers tend to notice. Their relationship, from what I could gather through mutual acquaintances who couldn't resist sharing updates, was exactly as toxic and miserable as you'd expect. Brooke had discovered that Derek, without the thrill of sneaking around and lying to other people, was just an unemployed man-child who played video games all day and couldn't hold down a job because he kept getting fired for personality conflicts with his supervisors. Derek, meanwhile, had learned that Brooke, without the ego boost of having multiple men competing for her attention, was just a high-maintenance drama queen who expected him to fund her lifestyle while she found herself. The best part was that Brooke kept posting these obviously fake happy couple photos on Instagram, trying to convince the world that they were living some great love story. But anyone with functioning eyes could see that Derek looked miserable in every single picture, and Brooke's captions were getting increasingly desperate. "Living my best life with my soulmate," she'd write, while Derek looked like he was being held hostage in the background of their selfies. Helen and Roger's divorce had been finalized 2 months ago, and from what I'd heard, it had been spectacular. Roger had apparently kept detailed records of Helen's spending habits and her involvement in encouraging Brooke's affair, which hadn't played well in court. Helen was now living in a one-bedroom apartment and working at a department store cosmetics counter, a far cry from her country club queen lifestyle. Roger, meanwhile, had moved to Florida, bought a boat, and according to his Facebook posts, was living his best life fishing and playing golf without anyone telling him he was doing it wrong. The Morrison family drama had been equally satisfying to watch from a distance. Derek's father, Robert, had followed through on his threat to disown his son, cutting off all financial support and removing Derek from his will. Derek's mother had sided with Robert after learning the full extent of Derek's lies and manipulation. Last I'd heard, Derek had tried reaching out to them around Christmas, but they'd refused to even take his calls. But honestly, the most satisfying part of this whole experience wasn't watching my former problems self-destruct. It was discovering what my life looked like when I wasn't constantly managing someone else's emotional chaos. For the first time in years, I could make plans without having to check with someone who might suddenly decide she had feelings about whatever I wanted to do. I could have friends over without worrying about whether they'd meet Brooke's social standards. I could eat cereal for dinner if I wanted to, or spend an entire Saturday reading without someone complaining that I was being antisocial. My work life had improved dramatically too. Without the constant stress of relationship drama, I'd been able to focus on my projects and had gotten promoted to senior account manager just last month. My boss had actually commented on how much more creative and confident I'd become, which was hilarious because all I'd done was remove one extremely negative person from my daily routine. The climbing group I joined had become a regular part of my week, and through them I'd met Elise Chun, a software engineer who worked for one of those companies that makes apps people actually use instead of corporate nonsense. When I told her the story of my canceled wedding, she'd laughed so hard she'd almost fallen off the climbing wall. "Wait," she'd said. "She actually thought you'd be okay with her sleeping with her ex-boyfriend before your wedding? And then she was surprised when you canceled everything. She called me mature and secure for agreeing to it," I'd explained. "That's not mature, that's being a doormat. There's a huge difference. What I loved about Elise was that she was exactly the opposite of everything that had been wrong with my relationship with Brooke. She was direct instead of manipulative, honest instead of dramatic, and she actually seemed to enjoy my company instead of treating me like an accessory to her lifestyle. When she said she wanted to do something, she meant it. When she was upset about something, she told me what was wrong instead of making me guess. It was like discovering that relationships didn't have to be psychological warfare disguised as romance. We'd been dating for 3 months now, and not once had she mentioned needing closure with any ex-boyfriends. Crazy concept, I know. The few mutual friends I still had from my Brooke days would occasionally update me on the ongoing drama. Apparently, Brooke and Derek had broken up and gotten back together 4 times since my wedding disaster, each time with increasingly public social media announcements about their unbreakable bond and meant-to-be connection. The last breakup had involved Brooke throwing Derek's PlayStation out of their second-story window, which had been captured on someone's Ring camera and shared widely among people who knew them. Gretchen, Derek's sister who had been Brooke's maid of honor, had actually reached out to me a few months ago to apologize for her family's role in the whole mess. She'd been mortified when she learned about Derek's cancer lies and had apparently spent weeks texting Brooke trying to talk sense into her before finally giving up and cutting contact with both of them. I should have seen what was happening, she'd said. Derek always was a manipulative little shit, but I thought he'd grown out of it. And Brooke, I don't know what happened to her. She used to be fun and normal, but somewhere along the way she turned into this person who thinks the world owes her something. Looking back now, I could see all the red flags I'd ignored during my relationship with Brooke. The way she'd talk about her exes like they were all crazy or couldn't handle her. The way she'd create drama with waitstaff and retail workers for no reason. The way she'd test my boundaries constantly, seeing how much she could get away with. The way she'd always have some crisis that required immediate attention and emotional support, but somehow never had time to provide the same support when I needed it. But the biggest red flag had been how exhausted I felt all the time when I was with her. I'd thought it was just the stress of wedding planning or work pressure, but now I realized it was the constant effort of trying to manage someone who was fundamentally unmanageable. These days, I woke up looking forward to my day instead of wondering what crisis would need my attention. I made plans with friends without having to negotiate or justify my choices. I pursued hobbies that made me happy instead of activities that would impress other people. And when people asked me about the wedding that never happened, I told them the truth. It was the best thing that never happened to me, because Brooke's text message hadn't ended everything. It had set me free.